Welcome to Mighty Banyans on the Bay, the faculty podcast of New College of Florida. I'm Douglas Estes, Associate Professor of Religion here at New College.
And I'm Alicia Mercado-Harvey, and I'm Assistant Professor of Spanish and History. And today we have a really exciting episode, and we're going to let our guest to introduce himself.
Sure. So I'm Peter Cook. I'm an Associate Professor of Marine Mammals Science and Psychology. I'm in the new Marine Mammal Science Master's Program, and I'm also an affiliated researcher at University of California, Santa Cruz, where I did my grad work.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about what you do. Just give us a broad overview.
Yeah. I do a lot of different things. It's always, this is my least favorite question because
Good.
it's
We
hard
got
to
out of the
put
way
in
first.
Yeah, it's good. It's all downhill from here. I have a really broad sort of set of research questions. They essentially all deal with animal brain and behavior. So I'm a comparative neuroscientist and a comparative psychologist. And I mostly work with marine mammals. So I've done some work with dogs, which otherwise I could just say I'm a marine mammal researcher, but the dog thing doesn't allow me to say that. And I've actually done a little bit of work with primates and a little bit of work with humans, so that also doesn't work. But I really mostly focus on animal brain and behavior. And I have a set of questions that are loosely interrelated. And I think the simplest way to tie them together is to say that what I really am interested in is sort of behavioral flexibility, intelligence, and curiosity in non-human animals. And I ended up largely studying marine mammals, partly because they are a set of species that, over the course of evolution has gone from a terrestrial to an aquatic environment. And in some of them, like the seals and sea lions, they still exist in both worlds, aquatic and terrestrial. And the set of kind of sensory, behavioral, and cognitive tools you need to adapt a body and an evolutionary history from the terrestrial world into the aquatic world, I think is a really interesting one, and often, I believe, privileges things like behavioral flexibility.
So I was just going to ask, so you're kind of in the field of Emeritus Professor Gordon Bauer, who's been an institution at New College for many years, and he's back, right? I mean, he's back teaching at the Marine Mammal program. And so how does your research similar and different from Gordon's?
For sure. Gordon is a treasure. I've known Gordon for a long time. I actually met him at the very first academic conference I ever went to in graduate school. I was introduced to him and to Heidi Harley, who runs the master's program that I now work at. This was probably 2010 or 2009 or something like that. And I was introduced to them by my graduate mentor, Colleen Reichmuth in California, who's an animal researcher, kind of a really well-known marine mammal researcher. And she was like, Peter, you're a cognitive guy. You like to think about brains and behavior, and you like marine mammals. And she's like, there aren't that many of you in the world, and two of the very best are Gordon Bauer and Heidi Harley, and here they are. And I talked to them, and it was really fantastic. And then later when I came here, it was really because of them that I came here in the first place. So I know Gordon quite well. He is, Gordon has Catholic interests, right? He's got a very, very broad set of research questions and expertise that he's explored in different species and with different kind of experimental paradigms over his career. He is, and the grad students at our program really treasure Gordon too, and he's been hanging out with them a lot and teaching them about animal behavior, which is super cool. But he is just an encyclopedia about animal behavior and cognition. So in some sense, I would say I'm similar to Gordon in that I also have very broad interests, and I look for the model systems, the animals and the experimental paradigms and the approaches that allow me to address those questions. Gordon is a little bit more focused on behavior and peripheral physiology. A lot of his research is really on sensory systems. So how do animals see? How do they hear? How do they touch? He's looked at vibrissae sensitivity in manatees and vision in different species. I do a little bit of sensory work, but I'm a little more farther up the chain in the nervous system. I do a lot of work on the central nervous system, on the brain, and looking at things like memory and reward systems. So Gordon's and my work dovetails a lot, and we actually collaborate. We just have a new manatee brain paper that just came out in Frontiers of Neuroscience about a week or two ago. So that's super fun. And we've also written some theory papers with Heidi Harley over the years. So I love working with Gordon. I feel like we're pretty complementary because he knows a lot about what's happening on the outside of the animal's body, and I know a lot about what's happening centrally in the animal's brain.
Wow, how much expertise we have on this field just at New College. Students are very lucky.
For college, this is tooting our own horn, obviously, but it is 100% true. It's like a true toot. The amount of marine mammal cognition, physiology, behavior, and neuroscience expertise at New College for a college of this size is, I actually think it's unparalleled in the world.
Awesome.
No question.
Yeah.
So of all the animals you work with, which is the most interesting to you?
Haha. Tough question. Almost all animal behavioral researchers have like a favorite species. It's kind of like you're not supposed to pick your favorite kid, you know? It's like my kids are now, I have a couple teens and a toddler, and they are always like, Dad, who's your favorite kid? And there, in all honesty, there is no favorite kid. They're all my favorite. But like, people always want to know what I know you asked a more nuanced question, but people always want to know what your like favorite animal to work with is. And actually for me, it's really, I feel almost embarrassed to admit that I have a favorite, but I really do, and it's sea lions. So I've worked with a lot of species, primates, cetaceans, different pinnipeds, seals, and sea lions. But sea lions are the ones that I keep coming back to, both for behavioral and brain work. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But at the core of it, I think, is that they are a species that is more sort of amphibious than almost any other mammal species. So they hunt in the ocean, and they're extremely efficient and effective hunters, and they can travel over wide ranges and hunt cooperatively with other sea lions, and potentially, it's not verified, but even other species. But they also are really capable on land. They mate on land. They go to land to be safe because they don't have any predators on land. And sea lions do a lot on land. Like in San Francisco, where we have a lot of sea lions and close to where I did my graduate work, it is not uncommon for sea lions to just wander into town and like go to a restaurant and take a sandwich or something, right? Or like, for some reason they like to get on top of police cars. They're frequently filmed on top of police cars. I don't know what that's about. But they're really amphibious. They're great in the water and they're great in land. And there's something about that combo that makes them really excellent research animals. I think it's that they can adapt to almost any situation you give them. And they're also, because they have such a broad set of ecological niches they can fit into, they're really good at going into a new situation and figuring out how to exploit it and get what they want, which is part of why people don't like sea lions, because they steal the fish off your fishing line, or they go to your fish ladder and take all the fish, or they bum around on your wharf. But it makes them great research animals, and they're actually, it's a little arcane, but kind of an interesting semi-verified fact. For the amount of studies that have been done on sea lions, there's sort of more existence proofs in sea lions than almost any other species. An existence proof being where, for the first time, you show that an animal can do a thing that no one was sure an animal can do, right? So I won't list them all, but there are multiple things where sea lions have been able to do it even when we can't get other primates to do it. I don't think it's because they're smarter than chimpanzees or something like that, but I do think they're extremely motivated to do tough things. And in a research environment, you can get them to do almost anything, and they will keep doing it until they get it right. So I won't go on and on. I could go on and on about them forever, but I'll just sort of finish with a kind of a bivalent anecdote. So when I've worked with primates and a lot of other species, frequently they are pretty happy if they get the answer or problem right, like 50 or 60% of the time. It's fine. They're still getting their M&M or their fish or whatever. It's like, that's pretty good. I mean, if it's an F or a D, but they're happy with it. Sea lions want to get it right 99% of the time. If they get it right 90% of the time, they're showing signs of irritation. They want to figure the answer out. It's not enough to eat the fish. They want to get the answer right. So I used to work with a very old sea lion who was kind of on her last legs or flippers. And when she got really old and she wouldn't eat anymore, the only way we could get her to eat was by giving her hard cognitive tasks. She would eat the fish to do the task, but she wouldn't eat the fish by itself, right? So they're just super motivated, which makes them great to work with.
Wow. So maybe they're antisocial. Maybe that's why they get on top of police cars.
They're usually not mean or aggressive, but like they definitely do their own thing, and they are not too concerned about humans. Yeah, that is true.
We get a fair amount of, in the news in Chile. I'm originally from Chile.
Yeah.
Right, so we got a lot of news with sea lions doing things, in
right?
different parts of the Pacific Ocean. We have a lot of coast.
Totally. They are, it's everywhere they are. They're doing something that may be cute or annoying or funny. Yeah, but it's always interesting.
So it seems like in the U.S., if you're going to study mammals, you've really got two areas geographically, right? I mean, you've got the Bay Area of California, and then you've got Florida. Is that your limitation, or is there other key areas that I don't know about?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, so like probably the two most kind of research fertile areas for marine mammal research are California and Florida in the U.S. for sure. But there are good marine mammal researchers in Washington State looking at like orcas, for instance.
Okay.
And there are good marine mammal researchers in like the Northeast looking at certain cetaceans off the coast and even some like seals and things. But the hot spots really are California and Florida, and that is totally right.
Yeah. So if students want to study this is a great place to do it.
It's a great place to do it.
Yeah.
It's a great place to do it. And the new Marine Masters in Science program that Heidi Harley started and that I'm part of, Nick Gordon is helping out with, there really isn't another program quite like it in the U.S. There are a few things in Europe that are kind of similar, but it's pretty unique it is unique in the U.S. It's a 2-year, really science-focused Marine Masters program. It's something.
So I wanted to get to that, so I'm glad you
For
touched.
sure.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about this, because this is the only second master's program that we have. We have data science, and then we have marine mammal, which is the newest, right? It's a year old.
Correct.
So tell me how this all came about and, where it's going.
Sure. So it is I'm super happy to be involved in it, but it is truly the passion project of Heidi Harley, longtime professor at New College, who started it. And she, I believe, has wanted to start something like this she would have to give you the exact amount, but I think over a decade. Like, for a long time, she's really wanted to start this kind of master's program. And when she kind of talked me into coming here as a psychology professor 9 years ago, I guess, this was not the master's program, but just the density of really good animal behavior and marine research opportunities in this area was a big part of her pitch. And because of that, she's always thought, wow, to your question, what a great hotspot there's just so much centered here that we could be exploring with motivated students. And you can do it with undergrads, of course, we all know that, but there's always going to be limitations to the amount of research you can get done and the type of projects you can do with an undergrad versus a graduate student. And of course, we'd like to do both. So Heidi had been looking for a long time to figure out how to get a project like this off the ground. And when the new administration was very interested in starting master's programs, she had a pitch, like totally worked up, detailed, thorough, compelling, ready to go. And she had the personnel, me and Athena Reisig from biology and some other folks who were attached. And she had the curriculum, and she had the location at Caples, and she had the plan, and she had a bunch of students already who she thought we could bring in, from different institutions and from different collaborators around the country and the world. And it was like, wow, she really is ready to go. And I think that was a big part of how just her preparedness and dedication and persistence is how it got off the ground. But it's a pretty phenomenal thing to be part of. So I'm extremely happy that she did that. Yeah.
Right. And how many students do you currently have?
So we're in our first year, finishing up our first year, and we have 11 students, and those were really all hand-picked students. So Athena and Heidi and I all picked a few, young, capable scholars some from New College, some from other locations that we knew that we thought would really excel in a Marine Master's program. We thought, we're going to start with these known quantities, and we're going to see what we can get done. And they have been, beyond all expectation. They're getting so much done. They're extremely sort of good cheer. They're great friends with each other. They're great to work with. They're super fun to teach. They're all doing really interesting science. One of my students, this is the program's first student paper. It's coming out tomorrow on Sea Lions.
Right.
And there's more to come. There's a bunch more to come. So the students are cooking. We're super happy. And they were a great, great group. When we just finished looking at admissions for the coming year for our second class, because the idea is we'll have 2 cohorts going forward. It was, again, maybe not surprising given that there are not a lot of programs like this, certainly with this kind of quality and opportunity around the U.S., but there were a lot of excellent applicants. So we handpicked that first class, and we're like, now we're just opening the doors,
right,
seeing who's out there, and fingers crossed that we'll get some really great candidates. And wow, it was the hard part was who do we say no to, not who do we say yes to. So we're, I think, also extremely excited about next year's class.
Right. One thing that's we all think is very interesting is the fact that, or it's not interesting, it's good, it's both, that you already in the first year are publishing from it, so come to New College, publish, as well, do research, right?
Yes, and this is true in all academic disciplines to an extent, but in the biological sciences, if you were going to, certainly if you're doing graduate work, you should be looking to publish. It's the coin of the realm, right?
Yes.
You shouldn't be doing bad work, and our students are doing really cool stuff right now, but you need to hit the ground running, and you need to be able to do real science. So we have a robust curriculum that we work everybody through, but it really is, our focus is within 2 years, how do we get every student to produce publication quality work? And again, some of them are already publishing, and it's just year 1, so that's phenomenal. But that is kind of the promise and part of the pitch to really capable young students who are considering this kind of master's in science. If you want to go on to get a PhD, if you want to work in any kind of research setting that involves marine mammals, or even training settings or management settings, like having some real science behind your name, having done real work with world experts, not just us, but our collaborators around the country who we work with and bring the students into those collaborations. I mean, it's a huge leg up.
Yeah, good.
Great. So let me ask you, organizationally, how does this work? Because as I know, you were in the social science division now you're part of this program. So are you serving students in the undergraduate program as well, or just?
Yes, we are. It's a little, I think this is still evolving and it's a bit complicated. I think everybody at the college would acknowledge that it is complicated right now. But we're definitely interested in continuing to serve undergrads. Right now, we're still on undergrad thesis committees and are sponsoring undergrad theses and hope to continue doing that. We're also currently by invitation, but we are accepting undergrads into some of our grad courses. So third and fourth, really phenomenal third and fourth years. We have a few in a few of our classes. And actually, two that I'm teaching right now are finishing their theses as undergrads, and they're both joining the program next year as master's students. So it's hopefully, there are a lot of phenomenal undergrads at New College, and we can kind of create a bit of a pipeline for some of those who are most interested in marine science to just naturally transition from undergrad to grad. I think that'll work really well sometimes. Beyond that, I think the nuts and bolts are still being organized and worked out. The divisional structure seems like there is some question about how it's going to play out. Right now we have Heidi, Harley, and I are still, I think, technically in social sciences, and Athena Reisig, the other professor, is in biology, but the way the divisional structure integrates with the graduate program is not fully clear to me, I have to acknowledge. So stay tuned.
Right, changes could be coming.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So when we talk about things like favorites, is there a class, and I won't use the word favorite here, but is there a class that you really just enjoy teaching, or one class that you think is just you're most excited about?
For sure. So I really, and this is something I kind of learned from Heidi, or took the cue from Heidi, but when I was teaching predominantly in the undergrad program, I seldom taught the same class more than once, or every now and then I would teach the same class more than once, but I would heavily alter it. There's interesting pedagogical debates to be had about how to do this, but I really took kind of the spirit of old New College. It's experimental, like try new things, see what works, see what doesn't work, and keep adapting from that. So I love taking that opportunity to teach all kinds of things. And in undergrad, some of my favorite classes were my really weird intro psych class, which was called The Embodied Mind, and was all about like continuity between how humans and animals think, and I would actually have the students be doing experiments with humans and animals in the class, which was fun for an intro. And it was small and discussion based, which is also fun for an intro. But also on the other side, my comparative connectivity lab. So I'm a neuroscientist, and a lot of the work I do is on animal brains, and a lot of the work I do is kind of grossly maybe on dead animal brains that have been collected opportunistically, usually from animals that are euthanized in a veterinary setting or die on the beach or something, and we get their brains. And we can actually use brain imaging to image them and look at the pathways of connectivity inside the brain, which is like the architecture for brain organization. And I have a ton of interesting data. I've got whales and dolphins and seals and sea lions and chimpanzees and manatees and extinct marsupials. I've got so many, like from the Smithsonian, I have so many weird brains that I've imaged. And so I always taught an undergrad lab that was just like, let students use those brains to figure out interesting neuroscience questions. And one of my best students from doing that, which was always one of my favorite classes, is also now one of our master's students, Sophie Flem, who did a just incredible thesis. And Sophie is another student who has a paper that will come out within about a month. Okay. So another one coming, which is based on the undergraduate thesis, which looked at the organization of hearing in dolphin and whale brains, which was super cool. So I love teaching that. At the grad program, I have an incredibly fun class right now, which has undergrads and grads in it. And it's really a laboratory, it's a practicum. So we have a collaboration with the Marine Mammal Project in San Diego at the Navy that has a huge cohort of sea lions who play video games for enrichment. And I have a really great programmer who works for me on a grant I'm on. And we, as the class, got together and decided how to build a game for the sea lions to play, designed the game, built the game, talked to the trainers out there, shipped it out there, and we are now collecting and analyzing data from these sea lions in San Diego using the game that we built together. So that is a class, but it's probably going to lead to other publications, and it's incredibly fun. And it's getting all the students sort of soup to nuts, what is a science project, a really fun, unique science project that we can start together, advance together, analyze together, write up together.
So I'm learning that sea lions write their own jokes because they're on cops' cars and then they're playing Call of Duty. And
yeah, seriously. Well, I can't say too much about the game where we're at, but think more like Guitar Hero.
right. Okay.
So,
okay, good.
yeah.
Is there a mammal that you have not really engaged very much, but that you're hoping to engage soon?
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, so a couple.
Okay, great.
I always have a lot of kind of what's on the horizon collaborations. And one I'm really interested in right now is how marine mammals breathe. And maybe that sounds kind of esoteric or maybe not that interesting at first, but actually if you think about it, it's really weird because mammals, terrestrial mammals, don't usually have to think about their breathing. It just happens. Right. When you get enough CO2 in your blood, you breathe, right? It's just humans can bring it under control, which is very interesting. That's part of how we do speech and singing and things like that, or skin diving. But marine mammals have to really have very careful control of their breathing, or else, one mistake and you're done. You've got to breathe air, and you're at 2,000 feet deep, and then you're dead, right? So there's really incredible adaptations that we're actually looking at in the brain in terms of how the brain is organized that deal with breathing. And some of the animals that are most interesting there are not sea lions, but they're cousins, seals, like harbor seals and gray seals. And that's something I'm exploring over the next year or two with some collaborators in Europe, is like, how do they organize breathing behaviorally and neurobiologically? So I'm super into that, and I've always been around seals, but I've never done much research with seals. I've typically focused on sea lions. On the flip side, I've done a lot of work looking at dolphin brains, very interesting, but I've got a whole new kind of tranche of big, giant baleen whale brains that we're going to be looking at, and I'm really excited to get more into them. And part of what we're looking at there is things like how the brain changes to support like complex vocal communication. So I'm actually quite excited about that too. Outside of the marine mammals, right now I'm trying to stay focused, so I'm not really searching out a non-marine mammal to hyper-focus on at the moment. Okay, stay tuned on that.
Yeah, so I have another question on the program. So,
For sure.
I know that the data science has this track of like you're doing a 3-2, right?
Yes,
Students that
correct.
come as an undergraduate and then in 5 years they end
For
up with their
sure.
master's. Do you plan to do that too?
We do, and we have one 3-2 student this year actually who is doing a great job, and again was handpicked, and we thought would be a good pioneer for the program. We have structured that into our curriculum, and we are kind of have our antenna out. We 100% want to keep doing that. It's got to be the right students, right? And
Yes.
we are talking to some undergrads now who are already interested in this program, which is awesome. And the message we're giving them, which is what I give to anybody, is it's really demanding. The graduate work is really demanding. To finish your thesis while starting graduate work is really hard.
Yes.
But for the right student, it's doable with the right support. And I think we're going to keep finding those right students. The most important thing is that they find ways to get research experience, which New College is great for as an undergraduate, before they get to that point of graduate admissions. If they come in cold with really no research experience, and then they're trying to spin up their thesis and a graduate project at the same time, that is a tough road to hoe. But for the right student who has the right experience, I think it's a great option potentially.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that you have a part of the podcast, right, that it's with your student?
Yes, but we won't cover that here.
Okay.
So we got 6 minutes left. So here's the thing I was wondering actually is, and we've done this with a couple of the other ones, do you have like any video that we could splice in of anything?
For
like
sure.
It could be just like a couple of minutes of video of y'all, I don't know, going out on the boat, anything.
For sure. Yeah, we definitely have stuff.
Okay, so that would be good. And so I think that if that's okay, unless you have any more questions.
Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Did you cover the paper?
Well, we did that with Carson.
Right.
Carson
Right,
did.
yeah.
If you want to discuss that with them just for a little.
Well, I think what we had decided was we were going to keep because Carson was a primary contributor to the paper. We were going to keep the paper on that side of it, and then we were just going to make this about Peter and his
exactly.
work, and then it makes a nice boundary for those, so that nobody will be left out. But basically, we got 5 minutes. So I thought, we could splice in some video, or if you have anything else you want to add, we could definitely do that.
I mean, I have a lot of projects going. I mean, the other one, I guess, that I'm most excited about right now that is.
Let me prompt you.
You can go ahead,
Okay.
Douglas.
So tell us about another project that you're excited about.
Sure, I have a lot. I'm juggling a lot, but one that has just been submitted and is now going for review at a very nice journal, fingers crossed, is a really big long-term comparative brain project. And it looks at the brains of sea lions, seals, and coyotes, and it really looks at the way the brains are organized and whether that organization supports vocal plasticity or vocal learning. So this is something that has intersected with a lot of my work with pinnipeds, seals and sea lions, but also dolphins and whales, is how do brains reorganize to allow the ability to create and learn new sounds? Because most animals actually don't do that. As humans, we often take this for granted. We very naturally, as young humans, learn all kinds of new sounds, and as adults, we can keep changing the way we speak. We can imitate, we can learn new languages, we can learn, even with hard work, like to hear and produce new phonemes. Most species do not do that. Most species kind of get the sounds they get, and that's what they get, and they just make those sounds stereotypically throughout the life. And they're often under control of what we call subcortical, or often even brainstem regions. The sounds are released by like emotional conditions. So if you think of a chimpanzee being like, whoo, 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 it's like the chimpanzee does that when it feels a certain way, and it's a little more complicated, but it almost does it automatically. It can't not do it when it feels a certain way. It's just feeling a way triggers a sound. There's a few animals where that's not true. Humans, most notably, parrots, songbirds, but also, interestingly, the marine mammals. And part of the idea in the marine mammals is because they had to evolve to be able to control the way they breathe, that might free them up to also be able to alter the types of characteristics of the sounds, the calls they make. Where their terrestrial cousins, so things like wolves or bears for seals and sea lions, or things like hoofed mammals for dolphins and whales, they're not vocally flexible. They just produce stereotypical calls. These animals evolve, they go into the ocean, and all of a sudden, 20 million years later, they have tons of vocal flexibility. There's all kinds of ideas about how human and bird brains became vocally flexible. I have lots of marine mammal brains, and I've actually spent about 10 years, with the help of some students on and off, poring over these brains and trying to figure out the organizational structure that might or might not support vocal learning. And I finally got it, basically. Mm-hmm. And I had these coyotes to compare, not vocally flexible. I had these seals who are very vocally flexible, and sea lions that are kind of in the middle, and put them on this spectrum and characterized all these different brain circuits. We'll see how it goes in review, but I think it's going to be a very influential paper. People have been talking for decades now, like, what's going on in the brains of marine mammals that supports vocal learning? And just nobody had the data, and I finally got the data, finally did the analysis. So that's one that, keep an eye out in a month or two. That might be moving along, and I'm quite excited about that.
What's one thing that most people don't understand about animal brains or communication?
Yeah, for sure. So on the brain front, I think that one thing people tend to think about is that the size of the brain should sort of tell you how smart the animal is, right? Mm-hmm. That's a really natural assumption, and scientists have even sort of talked that way for many years. If that were true, like, humans would be pretty smart because we have pretty big brains, but like elephants have bigger brains, whales have bigger brains, some dolphins have bigger brains. Also, some animals that we think of as really, really smart, like a crow or a raven, have tiny brains. So like what we've really learned over the last, decade or two, is that it's not really the size of the brain, it's the organization of the brain, right? And it's kind of how many brain cells there are that can do the processing, how tightly in they're packed, and how they're interconnected. So I always think, and I talk to students about this a lot, they come in thinking of brains, they have all these kinds of metaphors for thinking about brains, like brains are computers, or like, brains are little people inside my head pulling levers, or whatever metaphor it is. And it's like, brains are networks, brains are like highway systems, or mycelial nets in the soil between trees. Brains are really networks. They're interconnected processors. The processors by themselves are boring. You put a neuron in a petri dish and it fires all day long and it doesn't do anything. Connect, a billion neurons or 86 billion neurons, and suddenly all kinds of interesting things happen. The reason they happen is because of how those patterns of organization are structured. So when we look at brains now, and I look at a lot of brains from different species, including sometimes unwillingly the human brain, the way to really think about what's the special sauce, like how do they do what they do? It really is about that organizational pattern. And that's something we can map now scientifically and quantitatively and understand. And when we look at it that way, like it opens up all these other dimensions of complexity and interest that are well beyond just like the brain is big, the brain is small, or whatever, right? And it also helps kind of illuminate some of the ways that humans really are special or unique, right? But also some of the ways we're not.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We really enjoyed the conversation. So, and as we always say, go Mighty Banyans!